Hello, you're welcome. It gives me great joy to notice you viewing this video today, and thank you very much for visiting my channel. I'm Dr. Olayinka Conley. I'm a sociologist. I'm a researcher. I'm a life coach. I consult and I do a number of things. I'm a public speaker. On this channel, I do a lot of stuff, and most of the things I do, you can cluster into sociology, research, relationship, and migration. So if today is your first time of coming in contact with this channel or my videos, thank you very much. Kindly subscribe to the channel, comment, like, and share. Kindly tell others about this channel and share this content and other contents as widely as possible for the benefit of others. And if this is not your first time of coming in contact with this channel, that is, you have viewed my content previously, kindly subscribe if you have not subscribed. And if you have subscribed, thank you very much for staying tuned. In this video, I want to address a very important topic in sociology. And I titled this video, What is Culture? And why study peoples and culture in sociology? Usually, the course that is very related to this video is usually titled Peoples and Culture. So that's why I'm making this video to ask the question so I can contribute to your capacity in the context of this course. That's why I say, what is culture and why study peoples and culture in sociology within the context of peoples and culture as a course. So I will be very direct and pragmatic and very practical in this topic, in this video, starting with what is culture? Culture, simply put, without necessarily going academic to saying, well, there is no generally acceptable definition of culture. There are different, but the central point in defining culture is to describe culture as the total ways of life of a group of people. It talks about everything about people, everything that people do, everything that happens in human society is regarded as culture. So we describe culture as the totality of how people live their life. Culture as the totality of how people live their life. Everything in their environment, everything that affects their ways of life and how they live. The totality of how a group of people live their life. So, or as a collective, or live their lives as individuals in group. So culture can be described as a total ways of life of a group of people, how they live their life in terms of the kind of names they bear, how they dress, the kind of architecture, the kind of houses they build and live in, the kind of cars they drive, how they greet themselves, the kind of works they do, the kind of marriages, the kind of families they establish, everything about people. So we want to understand the totality of the people. That's why if you talk about culture, you talk about the ethnography of the people. Ethnography is a research design through which you study everything about a people. So everything about a people is described as the culture of the people. And ethnography is a way you study the totality of the ways of life of people. So culture has been defined that way as the totality of how a people live their lives. So that is culture. So, and in sociology, why do we study people and peoples and culture? Then you can define people as the collectivity of individuals sharing common culture, common history, and common origin, and as a nation. So a people, before you say describe collectivities of individuals as people, that means they share common culture usually, common history, usually. There's something common to them, bringing them together beyond the current situation. They may not necessarily live within the same geographical boundary, but they may be dispersed and they may live in the boundary, but something must bind them together. Something must be common to them, usually their culture. which means totality of them, their history, and their origin, usually. So that's how to describe a people. So that is it. And then why do we now study what is the interest of sociology in terms of understanding peoples and culture? This is certainly due to the fact that you cannot understand a group of people without understanding their culture. And don't forget, sociology tries to understand people in groups. We want to understand how people behave, why they behave that way, the patterns of their behavior, the reasons for their behavior, the reasons for their relationship, how they relate, so that we can understand their past, present, and the future. We can understand the consequences, causes, and structures and patterns of their behavior. Now, if you want to understand a people, yet you don't understand their culture, so how do you understand them? So the best way to understand a group of people is to understand their culture. The culture is the people. The people only embody the culture. So through the culture, we can easily understand them or partly understand them. So it's very important that sociologists understand people's culture, because within the culture of the people, we are able to understand the totality of their being. And we want to understand in sociology people, not individuals. Individuals through the people, through the group to which they belong. So it's very important for us. This is why we pay so much attention to the culture of people and want to understand them. Also, when we want to understand people as a collectivity of people sharing common origin, common culture, common history, then the best way for us to do is to go about it is to understand the culture, because from the culture we're able to understand why people behave a certain way and why they do what they do. So we want to understand culture so we can understand people. We want to understand people, so we must understand their culture in totality. So that is very important to set as background. And there are two different types of culture, because we want to understand culture. So there are types of culture too. We say material culture and non-material culture. Don't say immaterial culture. No, we say tangible and intangible culture. Tangible culture refers to how those physical elements that define a group of people, how they build their houses, the kind of cars they drive, all those tangible things, their architecture. So all the tangible physical things you can see in the society that you can say of a truth, this is these people. That's what we call material culture or tangible culture. Then we have intangible cultures or non-material culture. These are things that are not tangible, abstract things, like names that people bear, the languages that people speak, how they greet themselves, their norms, their values, their behaviors, their characters. So these are the things we describe as non-material culture. So when you look at a culture, you can break it into two so that you can understand it sufficiently. The material culture, which is the physical, like their houses they build. And when you see some houses, you can say, okay, this person is an hero. This place is Europe, this place is America, this place is Asia, this place is Africa, this is Caribbean, this is Latin America, by the virtue of the way they build their houses. And if you look at the kind of non-tangible cultures like dressing, there's the way people dress, this person is from India, this person is from China, this person is from Africa, this person is from Europe, this person is from America. So the dressing can also give us an idea of who people are. So dressing can be an example of intangible culture. Now let's talk about characteristics of culture. Characteristics of culture, number one is learned. You can learn culture, and you can unlearn culture or cultural elements. So people learn culture through the process of socialization. I have another video on this channel that I call socialization. Socialization simply means the process of inculcating the norms and values of societies in an individual or a group of people. And it's a lifelong process. So check this channel, there's another video on socialization. So the way people learn culture is what we call socialization in sociology. So, and there are agents of socialization. These are social institutions that embody the norms and values which are transmitted into people as they are socialized across the social institutions that we call agents of socialization. So you can learn culture, you can unlearn culture by the virtue of your interaction. This culture is shared. People share culture. That's why you say they are a people. So these people have attraction to their different cultural elements. They are socialized into the same culture and they share the elements of those cultures. So they share it. That's why we say they are a people. the way they share names. I've seen people bear my exact name before, and I was surprised. My initial, my surname, in a bank. I was surprised. I had to see the individual and say, wow, this is interesting. So they share names, people share this architecture, people share, they do things in common. That's why they share. Then the culture is symbolic. There are symbols in culture. For example, religions have different symbols, different symbols to represent different things. So culture is symbolic because there are symbolic representations of different cultural elements. Also, culture is integrated because, like, don't forget I said there is tangible culture and intangible culture. So as people share their culture, there are different elements of that culture that comes together to be integrated and say this is the culture of this group of people. Then culture is dynamic. Culture is evolves, it changes. So no, culture is not static. Culture changes over time. Then there are concepts of culture in culture that you must know. There are different concepts that are related. Number one, ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is a situation, or is a situation where people judge other people's culture based on the standard of their own culture. It is very inappropriate in sociology. We describe people as ethnocentric. When you say my culture is better than your own, your culture is better than my own. So you don't judge culture based on this standard or benchmark of one culture. So when you judge other people's culture based on the standard of your own culture, or you judge a culture on the basis of a standard of another culture, you say it's ethnocentric. So ethnocentrism is a situation where people judge other people's culture based on the standard of another culture. So there's cultural relativity. So culture is relative. All cultures serve unique purposes in their own immediate environment. So that's why you cannot establish superiority of cultures. When you establish superiority of culture, that's ethnocentric. That's ethnocentrism. So, but cultural relativity says there is no superiority of culture. All cultures serve unique purposes and relevant purposes within their cultural environment and domain. So all cultures must be understood in the context of that culture. That's relativity. Then you talk about acculturation. Acculturation is a process where cultures converge, cultures meet, and they become hybrid. But one may be dominant than others. That's acculturation. And this is very common during this process of globalization. Then you have cultural diffusion. Cultural diffusion or diffusionism. This is where cultures spread out, cultures meet, they form hybridity, but they can coexist with no culture dominating the other, unlike in acculturation. So acculturation is talking about cultural assimilation, where a people takes other people's culture, a culture comes to dominate the other, and they assimilate, they imbibe that culture and it becomes dominant. But cultural diffusion can be described as a cultural association. That's where I want to put it. Cultural, unlike why acculturation talking about cultural assimilation? Cultural diffusion or diffusionism talks about cultural association in a way that different cultures meet, they diffuse, they move out, and they converge, but neither of this culture or none of these cultures becomes more dominant than the other. So they associate rather than assimilate. That's very important. Then there's the process of enculturation. Enculturation is similar to socialization. That is the process through which people learn culture. People learn to live. This is very important for integration, especially when we have different groups in society. You want them to integrate. So the process through which people learn culture is what we call enculturation. They learn a way of life. They are social. Some countries have these enculturation processes. Like in the United States, you learn. Even in Germany, even in China, you are subjected to a process of enculturation officially, whereby you can learn, especially because you may not be speaking their languages, you may not understand the culture. So we expect that you are enculturated so that you can function effectively in that culture. You don't become a problem. There is also cultural determinism. This is a process. This is a situation whereby it is believed that it is culture that ultimately determines who people are. Who people are. That is the culture. That is the way to understand people is to understand their culture, because it's the culture that informs who they are, how they behave, how they reason, how they think. It's a situation where it is believed that it is culture or people's existence within cultural domain culturally specific environment that determines who they are ultimately. That is the culture that informs ultimately who people are. So that's what we mean by cultural determinism. So it is possible to say, okay, people are not robotic, people are not robots. Even within their culture, they can still behave differently. That's why we have modal culture, and we have subculture, we have gang culture, youth culture, where some people behave differently from the general cultural expectation of society. So there can be subculture, there can be deviation. So people may not be robotic, may not be robots, but at the same time, it is just important within the confine of cultural determinism that culture plays significant role in terms of who people are. So we also talk about culture shock, which is profound psychological experience that people have when they come in contact with unfamiliar and new culture. Then we talk about culture shock. They can have anxiety, they can have confusion, it can be profound to the extent that they can collapse. So when you come in contact with new culture, people have profound psychological reaction, which can be anxiety, it can be extreme, profound, even sometimes depression, because they are surprised and say, what kind of, it's extreme surprise that what kind of culture is this? When you see things that are totally different from what we are used to. And this is the profound psychological and social intense reaction on the account of coming in contact with a totally different culture. So there's also cultural integration, where we expect that is very important in terms of culture to be able to move together, to fuse together, so that the society can function optimally. Don't forget, sociology is interested in social order in society, and so that we are able to have the societies. Though societies can change on the account of cultural changes, but we still expect there is a pattern of order. And so we expect that people should be integrated to learn. That's why we have enculturation, so that people can learn and fuse, so that societies can be largely predictable and harmonious and orderly. So, but we believe that culture is not static. Don't forget, in terms of cultural dynamism that I mentioned, culture can evolve, culture can shake, can change on account of internal processes, maybe population growth or innovations from within. So there is endogenous drivers of culture change based on internal processes, and there are exogenous in terms of globalization, westernization, interaction with other groups. That's how we talk about acculturation and diffusion. On the account of diffusion, on the account of acculturation, globalization, these are exogenous factors that can drive cultural change. And there are endogenous factors that are internal in terms of maybe population growth, complexity of the social system, social structure, and innovation from within. So culture does not change only on account of external factors. Internal factors are also there. So these are endogenous factors and exogenous factors that can drive changes in culture. So, but culture can change on the account of these two. So there's no static culture. That's why every sociologists are interested in social change, to see how societies are changing on the account of their changes in their culture, or their cultures, so we can understand why people behave the way they behave. We can also project how people are likely to change over time on the account of what we are seeing in their cultural change. So culture is dynamic. Culture can change, and we are interested in social change. As this cultures change, it will affect how people relate and changes in their patterns of relationship. This is what we call social change, which can be progressive or retrogressive. And culture is very important for development. This is a very important point, that the way cultures change, the way people manage their culture, the way cultures manage people can determine the level of change or growth and development that will happen in that society. So culture must be moderated in a way that does not become liability, rather it should be asset. So when cultures continue to evolve in a way that it supports growth and development of society, that is a very progressive culture. But any culture that holds down people and make people to retrogress, underdevelop, or continue to underdevelop, that is a retrogressive culture. That's why sociologists are interested in studying the culture to see how it's operating. Is the culture of the people becoming an encumbrance to their growth and development? If you study countries that are sustainably developing, their cultures tend to be more dynamic and inclusive and full of justice. But societies that continue to be very not so open, to innovations, and societies that hold on to their culture and become very reclusive, very locked in, may tend to have negative development outcome compared to societies that are more dynamic, more organic, and more inclusive. So there's a strong relationship between culture and development, and culture can impact development, and development certainly impacts culture. So it's symbiotic relationship between people and culture. People affect their culture, and culture affects their people. Don't forget cultural determinism. At the same time, as culture evolves or remains largely static, it will affect development. And as society develops, it will affect the nature, composition of their culture, and the functionality of their culture. Culture must be functional. It must not be dysfunctional. It must not be dysfunctional at all. It must be functional for societies to move on the path of growth and development. So we expect culture. So sociologists are very interested in culture, and it is very important that you take this course, culture and society, culture and peoples and culture very, very seriously. And it is important. And if you want to pass, if you enumerate, if you highlight and display and explain and give examples of in your write-up, whether in the exams or whatever you do this way, you should excel. I did another video on how to excel in sociology. If you take that video in line with this, then I think you should be fine. So make sure you write extensively in your exams, give examples, and be organized. I know that the way I've presented this lecture and the way I've delivered this lecture. Be organized and give examples, and if possible, write as much as possible, and get extra papers in your exam, and you will excel. So you can take other videos in line with this. For example, how to excel in sociology, career prospect of sociology, areas of specialization of sociology, and the rest of it that are related to this on this channel, and you will do well. I see you excelling. Thank you very much. Kindly subscribe and share this video as widely as possible. Drop your comments if you have other things you want to talk about. I will gladly take it. Thank you very much. Until I see you in the next video, go and succeed.